Testing, testing.
About to start.
More testing. You hear us?
No, it just came up for a second. Yeah.
All right, sounds like we're good.
It's late. It's working, but it's late. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay,
All right.
Yep. That's all me. All right. Item number 4 consists of tariff revisions from Hagerstown Light Department.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. David Hoppock on behalf of staff. Hagerstown Light Department has filed a tariff to implement the Public Utility Law Judge's Order number 91466 in case number 9744. As explained in staff's fuck sheet comments, the settlement agreement in case number 9744, which order number 91466 approved, included an updated tariff to implement the agreement. The tariff in the instant filing is identical to the settlement agreement tariff, other than the effective date, which is delayed from January 1, 2025, and the settlement agreement tariff to February 1, 2025 in the instant filing. Staff recommends that the Commission accept the filing with an effective date of February 1, 2025. I am available for questions.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none? We'll just go ahead and introduce yourself, and if you got any comments you want to make, go ahead. So.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Hoover and Commissioners. My name is Timer DeBush of the law firm of Duncan Weinberg, Gensler, Pembroke, here on behalf of the Hagerstown Light Department. It's been 20 years since we've had a rate increase. It's a modest rate increase. It's about an 8.7% increase for your typical residential customer. We did reach a joint mutual settlement with the Office of People's Counsel, trial staff, and it's not a remarkable rate increase. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for? All right. Well, with that, I move we accept the tariff revisions for filing with an effective date of February 1, 2025. Commissioner Sushman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barve.
Aye.
Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye.
And item number 5 is a request for CPCN extensions from Transource Maryland LLC, Baltimore Gas and Electric Company, and the Potomac Edison Company.
This is
Yeah, you
Fred's
go
old,
for it.
Fred's old firm.
That's my old firm. Yeah.
Good morning, Chair Hoover and Commissioners. Roger Austin presenting on behalf of staff. On November 13, 2024, Transource Maryland LLC, Baltimore Gas and Electric Company, and the Potomac Edison Company filed a joint request for additional extensions of previously extended construction commencement deadlines for CPCNs and CPCN waivers that were granted to each company in case numbers 9470 and 9471. At the time of the filing, the companies were still awaiting the resolution of pending federal court litigation challenging the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission's order denying Transource Pennsylvania LLC's application for a CPCN to construct portions of the IEC project located in Pennsylvania. The various portions of the IEC project and the PE Rebuild project are part of the larger Project 9A. No part of Project 9A can proceed until all parts have received the necessary regulatory approvals in Maryland and Pennsylvania. The companies requested additional extensions to December 31st, 2025 for each construction commencement deadline of the CPCNs and CPCN waivers that were granted to the companies. On December 11th, 2024, staff requested that the Commission grant a temporary extension of the CPCNs and CPCN waivers to provide additional time before the expiration of the company's construction commencement deadlines of December 31st, 2024, for staff to complete its due diligence review. On December 19th, 2024, the Commission granted a temporary extension to January 31st, 2025 of the company's construction commencement deadlines. Through its review, staff has determined that PJM's 2024 reevaluation of Project 9A shows that the project creates uncontrolled congestion and potential reliability violations, and the benefit to cost ratio is now 0.81. Staff has also determined that PJM requested that FERC grant it additional time through the end of the third quarter of 2025 to perform its 2024 reevaluation of Project 9A, but concerningly, FERC did not respond to PJM's request. Staff has also determined that among TransSource, Maryland, PE, and BGE, the project has accumulated sunk costs of approximately $41.3 million through December 2024. And while BGE's sunk costs have remained flat at approximately $8.6 million since December 2021, TransSource, Maryland, and PE together have been accumulating additional costs at the rate of approximately $800,000 per year. In spite of these concerns, staff acknowledges that the PJM transmission tariff is FERC approved, and that until such time that Maryland withdraws from PJM, the state needs to follow the determinations made by PJM regarding the need for transmission upgrades. Staff also acknowledges that the Federal District Court decision that reversed the PAPUC decision essentially stated that under the federal Constitution's supremacy clause, the PAPUC determination on the necessity of a transmission project cannot trump that of a federal agency. So staff recommends that, provided no objections are raised by any of the state agencies coordinated by PPRP, the Commission grant an additional extension of the CPCN that was issued to TransSource Maryland to build a new 230 kV transmission line in Washington County and extend the construction commencement deadline specified in case number 9471 to December 31st, 2025. Grant an additional extension of the construction commencement deadlines specified in case number 9471 for the two CPCN waivers that were issued to Baltimore Gas and Electric Company to add two new 330 kV transmission lines in two of its existing rights of way in Baltimore and Hartford counties to December 31st, 2025. And grant an additional extension of the construction commencement deadline of the CPCN that was issued to the Potomac Edison Company to upgrade and rebuild an existing 138 kV line in Frederick and Washington counties as specified in case number 9470 to December 31st, 2025. And staff, council, Dean, and I are available to answer any questions.
So, questions from the Commission. Commissioner Richard.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Just a few questions, just to kind of reconcile, I guess, the filing. I think you acknowledged that a lot has changed since 2020 when the order was issued, and today. When we were looking at the filing in 2019-2020, there was a BC above 1.25. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and that was one of the benchmark we had to, for this to be in the public interest and and determine need, it needed to be 1.25 to qualify as a market efficiency project.
That's correct.
Okay. Also, it came to light during the proceeding that this project would also address some violations that were impending, and therefore it was also considered an approach to again kind of get ahead and take care of that issue as well.
Correct.
And from your bug sheet, it sounds like, in fact, we're going backwards. That now we're concerned that we may be creating violations. Am I reading your bug sheet correctly?
That's correct.
Okay. And then the other, I mean, this really isn't the project that PGM proposed. They came back and it was found that, and I think everyone agreed it was in violation of Maryland law because there was not consideration of a Maryland or of an existing, right of way. And so that was addressed and the project was changed, and that project is what we approved.
Correct.
So it wasn't the PJM proposed project. It was, a variation.
It was
on
a
that.
modification.
Okay. I guess, and also you've discussed just concerns, about changes in that there may be new need because of load forecasts. Is that correct? Because you think load is growing, that PJM is saying, well, let's just kind of move forward with this anyway. Is that one of the reasons you feel like we should be moving forward just because of circumstances changing with load growth since 2020?
That's not what I said.
Okay. I could be.
PJM provided, I think, 6 reasons why they believe. the
Okay, so
project should
it's in your
be
buck
moved
sheet,
forward
but
with
you've
buck-
you've accepted those as reasons.
and we're just listing them.
Okay.
Not necessarily accepting them. We're listing them for you.
Okay. Just as we're looking at the benefit costs, is staff confident in the direction it's potentially going, that where PGM may be taking this analysis? One, given that this is a suspended project, and when they're looking at all the various projects they're looking at now, whether it's the intermediate needs projects, the RTEP, I guess 2024 Window 3 projects, and these other projects that Dominion is proposing, that this new $10 billion in projects are going to again be considered when they look at this analysis that they're doing in the next 3 months. PGM is doing the next 3 months.
Yeah, we have no idea. PGM says that they feel confident that, if they're allowed to do a new reevaluation, the benefit cost and would rise, and the reliability violations and congestion problem that they're seeing right now would go away. But that's what PGM is saying. We can't confirm or.
Okay, so we're just going to have to see what they say. I guess after the first quarter. I guess they're going to do it sometime in the first quarter.
Actually, not until the end of the 3rd quarter.
Oh, am I reading that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought it was after the end of the first quarter. Okay. And just as far as this load growth, do we have anything specific that we've heard from PJM on where this load growth is? And I'm specifically interested because I think we need to understand that, because we're expecting all this energy to come from Pennsylvania, but they just recently had their own resource adequacy hearing. And I guess the question I would have is, do we know that the power is going to be there and available to Maryland in the coming years, or will this essentially become a stranded asset? Does staff have any kind of insights as to that question?
Have no insights. As far as load growth is concerned, I'm aware based on other projects that there is load growth due to data centers in Virginia.
Okay. And then finally, the interconnection queue has been backed up, and there are projects, around the PJM footprint. Do we have any insights from PJM as to will any of those projects, those currently listed or those that probably are going to be incentivized because of current capacity prices, where those projects may be, and will they be available, and something we should consider before we take any action on this proposal today?
No, we have no insight on that.
Okay. And I guess you already answered the question. We're not going to really hear from PJM until later in 2025.
The end of the third quarter.
Third quarter. Okay. Well, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Sussman.
Morning, Mr. Austin. In response to Commissioner Richards' questions about your findings now and the findings of PJM, if this project were to come before the commission with uncontrolled congestion, potential reliability violations, and a benefit cost ratio of 0.81, it would be staff's recommendation that we reject the CPCN for that. If we weren't dealing with, I'm just talking about just the substance of the project. Staff is concerned about what you're seeing right now in terms of the quality of this particular project.
Yeah, PJM probably would not have approved the project in the first place if it had
But staff would also be troubled by that.
Yeah.
But it's your position that for legal reasons, we need to extend the timing. And so you gave two different reasons in the buck sheet. So the first one, staff acknowledges that the PJM process is FERC approved, and that under such time that Maryland withdraws from PJM, the state needs to follow the determinations made by PJM regarding the need for transmission upgrades. So once PJM makes a decision about needs, the state has to follow it.
And so that's where I'll turn over to
Okay,
Mr. Dean.
Mr. Dean. That's a really, it's always wise to just call the lawyers in.
The short answer is yes. However, the project would still need to be cited. So the state, if the project couldn't be cited under Maryland law, then the state could still reject it.
Okay, and the citing includes a needs determination.
No, the needs determination would use the PJM
Okay.
determination.
So do you have the Maryland PUA with you?
Yes, I do.
Good. So can you turn to PUA 7-207, subsection F? Okay, and I will read this so that in case other folks don't have it, we always have ours with us too. For the construction of an overhead transmission line, so this is the CPCN process. So this is our authority. For the construction of an overhead transmission line, in addition to the considerations listed in subsection E of this section, the Commission shall take final action on an application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity only after due consideration of, and then this is little I, the need to meet existing and future demand for electric service. So we have an obligation to look at the need. If we find that there's no need, we can, and actually I read this to require us to reject a CPCN. Is that your understanding of the PUA?
That's exactly the same thing that Pennsylvania did and were overturned in federal district court.
Yeah, okay. So we can get to the second part of your argument, and that is a district court decision in a completely different circuit made a decision that NARUC is on record as opposing, and the Maryland PSC has supported that opposition. So the Maryland Commission has taken a position that the district court decision was wrong. Is staff taking the position that the that a district court decision in a completely different circuit was correct?
My reading of the decision, which is Transforce PA LLC v. D. Frank, 705 Federal Supplement 3rd.
Yeah, no, I've read the decision. I've read the decision multiple times. I can tell you from my perspective the decision's wrong, but also from the perspective of NARUC and the Maryland PSC. So the Maryland PSC has taken the position that a district court finding that a commission has no authority to make needs determinations, that is inconsistent with our state law, Pennsylvania state law, but it's also inconsistent with federal law. FERC has backstop siting authority, very, very limited backstop siting authority. Otherwise, siting responsibilities rest with the commission. When you put language into your buck sheet that the needs determination that a state makes cannot trump that of a federal agency, that is a complete reversal of what is actually in place in law. Only in those very, very limited circumstances when FERC can exercise its backstop siting authority, state has complete responsibility in terms of siting, and that includes needs determination. So I'm really troubled by the reasons that you're giving for us to extend the deadline for the CPCN. Those are reasons that are not consistent with Maryland state law. So do you have another reason why we should be extending the time? Other than those two legal arguments, which I think are specious.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with your determinations on the application of Maryland law.
Okay, but this was the determination of the Maryland PSC as well. So it's not just me. Okay, that's all I have.
Mr. Barbie.
Thank you. I think most of my questions have been covered, but quickly, the benefit cost ratio right now is 0.81. I presume that if costs continue to be accumulated, the benefit cost ratio will only go downward, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And what kinds of, what's the correct word? What kinds of factors can we readily assume will improve the benefit cost ratio? Can you think of things that would make it better?
The amount of congestion that's occurring.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Congestion.
Okay, improvement in congestion. Okay.
Improve the
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, just so I'm straight on this recommendation, even though this project, may create problems as opposed to solving problems, has a BCA that's under the normal standard, it's staff's view that we still should continue to extend the CPCN authority for this project.
Yes.
Okay. OPC.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Michael Sammartino on behalf of the Office of People's Counsel. We agree with staff's overall recommendation that the extension request should be granted, provided that the companies submit informational filing after PGM releases the results of its reevaluation that updates the Commission about those results. We think that the PGM reevaluation would produce a little bit more clarity about the continued viability of the project, and that's the basis for our recommended approach.
Questions for OPC?
Yes, I don't know if you had any comment on some of my questions to staff, so you're welcome to say. But I'm interested from OPC's position, just the sunk costs and the ongoing sunk costs. One of the things that we did require in our order and subsequent extensions is to minimize those costs. It appears, however, that there are, they continue to grow. Do you have any comment on that or any concerns?
Yes, Your Honor, we're incredibly concerned with the sunk costs, but we recognize that the Commission granted the extension request last year, and the current information that we have about the project's continued viability is based on the information that was available to the Commission last year, and so we think a more conclusive determination under more recent facts would ultimately provide some clarity on what should happen to the project.
Okay. PGM has called this basically this project is suspended. Yet, even though it's suspended, costs are still being expended. Do you see any action we should take to make sure that if the project is suspended, that there be a suspension of any further costs until we have a determination from PJM on I guess the status of this project, particularly given the more than $10 billion of projects that have already been also approved by PJM.
Your Honor, that's something I might have to take upstairs.
Okay.
I think I know the issue of the sunk costs has come up in our review of TransSource's formula rate, and our understanding is that the costs being put towards the project are merely in response to the fact that PJM has suspended it, and it's just the minimum cost necessary to comply with what PJM has ordered. But that's I might not be the best person to fully address what the sunk costs currently entail. But that is a concern for us, that and our preference would be that there are no sunk costs.
No sunk costs, okay. And then also it's kind of I guess an inverse that the more I guess we have sunk costs, that actually improves the BCA. So I think we probably, just so we don't have a misperception of the project, let's kind of stem these sunk costs if we can. Would that be a position that OPC would take? I know you wanted to take it upstairs.
Yeah, I don't know if I can commit to what OPC's position
Okay,
would
fair
be at
enough.
this moment.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Sussman.
Okay, so to follow up on Commissioner Richards' question, and maybe this is a question you have to take upstairs. So, I mean, I'm sort of looking at a project that if it were being proposed now would not be something that PJM would approve, or would get a CPC in from us, I'm assuming. And yet if we extended the deadline, they could continue to incur costs. Staff has already sort of pointed out that there's about $800,000 a year of project costs. But I'm assuming that there's also been some cost recovery, and I'm going to be asking the utilities whether there's been any QIP that's been recovered for any project spend. So for a project that doesn't look viable, and doesn't look like it's going to be going forward, does OPC have a position on cost recovery for that kind of project that's already been recovered in rates? And you can take that one upstairs too.
I'm hesitant to, given the legal issue around the preemption, I'm hesitant to express an opinion on that immediately. I think, if under the current, fact, if I recall, I wasn't at OPC when we litigated the TransSource case. I know that we opposed the CPCN, and we had some concerns with the cost-benefit analysis supporting the project. And so under the current, circumstances, if there's no factual change and the benefits to cost ratio is below the PJM's requirement for a market efficiency project, we would have concerns with moving forward with the project. But I think an updated evaluation of the project using more recent system data would provide some clarity and about
Okay,
the
thank you.
viability.
Commissioner Barbe? Actually, I got a couple questions. So, yeah, the normal posture of the office is to encourage us to, in a lot of these situations, stop digging. And is it your view that granting the extension and allowing them to still spend money on this project while it's suspended is more beneficial to ratepayers than if we deny the extension?
I think there's a fair amount of litigation risk that denying the extension might pose.
Okay. Okay. So let me turn to power plant before I turn to the company. So.
Good morning, Commissioners. Again, Sandra McLemore on behalf of the Power Plant Research Program. I just wanted to make sure you understand that we did file comments on this issue in support of staff's recommendation to extend the time. And if you have any questions with regard to the siting, Mr. Kelly's here to answer those as well. Thank you.
Any questions for power plant? Okay. No, I think we're fine. So, all right.
Your Honor, good morning. Joseph Curran on behalf of TransSource. I'm joined this morning from Columbus, Ohio, Mr. Hector Garcia, who was or is senior counsel at AEP. Commissioner Richard may remember him from our litigation back in 2019 and 2020. And we're here to answer your questions. Obviously, we appreciate staff's thorough review, as well as the, we think, responsible recommendation from the Office of People's Counsel, which we would be agreeing to if the commission saw fit. We do want to bring to your attention essentially two things. We are towards the conclusion of litigation in the Pennsylvania proceedings. In fact, in addition to the case before the district court that Commissioner Suchman pointed out, it has gone to the Third Circuit, and that is winding up. It was fully briefed and argued last year, as we had indicated to you last year. So we expect a decision in 2025 for a final resolution to that. And if it directs us to go back to Pennsylvania for a new CPCN there, we'll know that sometime in 2025. The other big point, which both staff and OPC raised today, is there will be a reevaluation of this project. The current evaluation, as Commissioner Richard pointed out and as indicated in staff's comments, was based on a prior model. We don't know if the current model, which includes, as Commissioner Richard pointed out, will include all the projects in the topology that are part of the 2022 RTEP and the 2024 Window 1, which was recently or is recently being concluded, as well as the 2025 load forecasts, which were not part of the prior evaluation. That reevaluation, which is supposed to conclude in the third quarter of this year, will either indicate that the project shouldn't go forward, or it will, or PJM will lift it out of suspension, and or have a conclusion that the project continues to be needed and await final regulatory approval if we go back to Pennsylvania. So you've raised very good questions about process and about costs, and Mr. Garcia is here to answer specific questions about sunk costs. You will notice over the years, since we've been coming back for these extensions, that the actual incremental costs that we've spent over the last few years have gone down. That doesn't mean that shouldn't be a concern for you all, but Mr. Garcia can speak to how the company is minimizing those costs in accordance with your order, but also they are required to incur costs under the PJM order, which requires them to be ready to go if they get the go-ahead from Pennsylvania. So while we can't have zero costs, those costs have been minimalized, and Mr. Garcia can explain how the company is doing that. So we think and understand your concerns, and we're not here to challenge the commission on its jurisdiction. The commission found that the project was needed after thorough litigating this case and after, quite frankly, putting together a very complex and time-consuming effort to reach a settlement, not only with state interveners, but with landowners. So we would ask you respectfully not to disrupt the settlement at this point, because that was a very hard-fought and contentious battle to pull that together before you all. You all saw fit, your predecessors did back in 2020, to approve that settlement, finding need for this project, and due to litigation that's beyond the control of the developer. What's in our control is our cost. We understand that. But beyond the control of the developer was the rejection in Pennsylvania, which they have been taking very judicious steps to have overturned and hopefully have a positive resolution there. Despite the litigation, you all should know, and it's not in staff's comments, the company has been working to resolve the issues in Pennsylvania as well, and reached a major settlement with Franklin County, which was one of the big opponents of the TransSource Pennsylvania case. So again, understanding your frustration on the time, costs that go into this, but we do see a light at the end of the tunnel. Major events will happen this year. Resolution of the federal litigation, and 2, a reevaluation. And the reevaluation concludes that the project's no longer needed. That's built into your order already. There's no reason to amend or change your order. That's already a requirement that we have to continue to demonstrate PJM's support and continuation of this project in order for it to go forward. So I will rest there. I know Mr. Garcia has come in, answer specific questions about costs. Happy to do that and answer your questions as well.
Okay, questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Richard?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for being here, and I'll just begin. If you have any comment on, I guess my first comments, or my first questions to staff, and that is just the change of circumstances are pretty drastic, and also we're looking at a project now, according to PJM, that has no longer would qualify as a market efficiency project, and of course I don't think they would be backing it if it actually caused problems and it resolved problems. So it seems like there has been a degradation in this project in this period of time, and at the same time they've PJM has proposed a number of projects to first look at deactivations and load growth, and then also just in the RTEP 2024 window 3. So again, can you say anything that you feel that you have information that should give us a reason to wait for PJM's assessment, which now won't happen until the end of the year? During the period of time, you still want to spend money, though, and again, there's $10 billion worth of projects now that are out there proposed by PJM that our ratepayers are going to have to pay. Should we be still spending money on this?
Yeah, Your Honor, thank you for the question. And I think that it's important to make 2 clarifications on the points that you are making. Regarding the changes in the topology of the grid, the projects that are coming in, that have been approved, the changes in the location and the amount of the load. What PJM explained when it submitted its request for a waiver to FERC is that the models that were used in the previous reevaluation did not incorporate a number of changes in the grid, and it's not possible to make an assessment of the present function and need of the Project 9A because the imbalances in those models. So it's not really that, and I'm not trying to minimize the results of the evaluation, which, by the way, the second one had to be done with the same model. So of course, it had exactly the same results because it's just math, right? But without integrating the projects that have been approved since the Project 9A had to be essentially removed from the planning models, it's not possible to make an assessment of what the project does and doesn't do. And the observation that you're making, which is actually from the report from PJM about the violations that appear in the model, it's not specifically that the project is causing them in the forecast of what's going to happen. What's happening is that the model has violations across the system, and then the incorporation of this particular set of facilities facilitates the flow of power in a particular direction. But that doesn't indicate what it's reasonable to expect once the model is updated, which is going to happen this year, in order to make the reevaluation that PJM is going to conduct in 2025. So that's on the planning side. Just to summarize it in just 2 words, we cannot tell without updating that model what the current need of the project is and what the current function of the project is, because the absence of the projects and the presence of the violations masks the entire analysis. Now, on the question of maintaining the project on its ready state, the instruction that the project developers, and I'll speak for Transor specifically, have received from PJM is consistent with the direction that we got from this commission, which is that we need to maintain the project in a ready state and minimize the cost necessary to do so. Those costs, for example, include things like maintaining the right-of-way options so that they don't lapse. It includes the maintenance of equipment and materials that have already been acquired, and actually that were acquired at a price that wouldn't be available today if we were going to develop the project. So from that point of view, the one thing that Project 9A has going for it is that it's a very mature project in terms of once, if the determination is made in 2025 that it has a present need for the current conditions, it's the fastest thing that can come online because it has engineering already, it has a significant amount of siting, it has already received the approval from this commission, and we are in the process of working through the process in Pennsylvania, as Mr. Curran mentioned. In the meantime, and prior to we going back to Pennsylvania to ask for a CPCN based on whatever it's determined what the current need is, and pending the result of the Third Circuit litigation, one thing that we have already worked out is that we reached a settlement with the other county. As you may recall, Project 9A has facilities in the east and the west. We originally had already a settlement with the county in the east side of the project, York County in Pennsylvania. And in the meantime, we have reached a settlement with Franklin County on the west side. So from that point of view, the efforts that are being continued right now are not really efforts to advance the project, but really to maintain it in a ready state.
Okay, well, thank you. And with regard to the model, I guess with the model, that's one of the areas that concerns me, because your project has been suspended, but a lot is happening in the meantime. And so all the other projects have been put together. We're talking about the RTEP and the immediate needs projects and
that's correct.
Other projects. But it has basically not considered your project. I mean, so everything's being planned around, what the conditions are now. And so I just, again, I don't need you to maybe just repeat your answer, but it just seems that it's becoming increasingly risky when we see a project that's degrading in value, when it appears that PJM has planned, for violations and for market efficiency with everything else it's doing. So
actually,
yours has been left behind, hasn't it?
Well, I actually would say that it's the opposite. There are very significant needs in the grid that are constantly trying to catch up with the increases in load and the location of that load, and with the changes in the retirement of generation, and then in the incorporation of generation, for example, renewable, in different parts of the grid. So the grid is dynamic, and you are correct that projects are being added, but I will not speak for PJM on this, but my observation is that the windows that keep coming up seem to continue to indicate that the needs are increasing. So from that point of view, while the project is not in the model when they are making a determination of how to solve immediately, there is quite a bit of need in the region, and these facilities actually have a very important function in transporting power across the region. So the determination of the need of the project is essentially made anew constantly. It's not the basis of the project is no longer whatever it was when it was first selected in 2016. It has to stand on its merits right now. But the one thing that I would want to clarify is that the information that we have from the most current reevaluation is actually not an indication of the need of the project. What it is an indication of the model not having resolved the reliability violations that were present in that model, and therefore not incorporating also the projects that have been recently approved. So without looking at the model with those projects in, it's actually not possible to make a determination of whether the project today is needed, which is what PJM was articulating when it requested additional time to conduct that. So from that point of view, if I may, this is the time to actually see what the result is. And if the result is that the project should be canceled, PJM will have no hesitation to let us know that, and we'll inform the Commission immediately. But without that information, it would be premature to cancel the project at this point, as PJM explained to FERC.
Okay, and so it's your understanding that PJM this time, after the third request for an extension, is going to finally change its model and take into consideration how your project fits in with other approved projects, and it's also going to be looking at load forecast, where the load is growing, and it's going to take a holistic approach finally, and we will know in the third quarter of this year, definitively, whether or not this project is needed or not.
That's my understanding as to the current process. One thing that I would highlight, Your Honor, I don't mean to mince words, but the most recent reevaluation had problems in the model because the model has not been able to catch up to the analysis.
And I know with PJM, it's frustrating. Yeah, we're always waiting for them to get it right.
Yeah,
but in the meantime, our ratepayers are paying increasing amounts of money for transmission projects that get proposed and then canceled. For generation stations that are waiting to get online. So I think there's a concern and beginning to lose some confidence in PJM. And so I just wanted to have a sense from you that you think the model this time will give us information so we can be determined this year, once and for all, whether this project is really needed.
Your Honor, the model is going to indicate if the project is needed with the planning criteria in 2025. I cannot predict what's going to happen immediately after, although I do have a very strong indication that 2025 is a pivotal moment for the project, because it's also coming to a head with the Third Circuit litigation. So I don't expect that it's going to remain uncertain. It's either going to be determined that it's needed, or it's going to be determined that it's not needed.
Okay, and then the final, just you talked about how you are trying to minimize costs. Can you just give me some idea how you're going about that, and what do you think the costs are going to be if we were to go ahead and extend this year? And also, I guess a third part of that question would be: is there something unique about your project as opposed to what FEI project and the BGE projects that again, why we should consider your project separately from BGE and FE, since you're using primarily greenfield?
No, Your Honor, these projects go together, so they should be considered in conjunction. And you're asking me about the minimization of costs. We take a hard look every time that there is a need, for example, to renew options. whether it's the right thing to do every time that comes up. And every time that we have looked at that question, we have made the determination that it's significantly more costly to let them lapse and take that risk rather than continue to maintain them. Same thing with the maintenance of materials and equipment. Just to give you a little bit of perspective, if we were going to order a transformer today, there would be a wait time of up to 48 months in order to obtain that same piece of equipment that we have right now at the ready. But in order to maintain the material and the equipment at the ready, there are costs associated with that. This is equipment that requires certain
I understand
specifics
that. Just tell me, are you going to work to minimize costs, and will your costs, if we were to approve an extension, be less than they have been up to this point?
Oh, we definitely are doing that already, as demonstrated by the fact that those numbers are going.
Your company is spending more on some costs every year.
It's going down from what it was last year, sir.
It is? Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Fleischman.
Good morning, Mr. Garcia.
Good morning.
Would you be able to tell the commission how much you've spent on these projects so far?
Your Honor, I don't have that number at the ready, but there is an amount in the books of both Transource Pennsylvania and Transource Maryland that it's already represented in the analysis. It's approximately $100 million.
$100 million that has been spent so far.
Correct, and most of that was prior to the direction to maintain the project in a ready state and minimize other costs. So the bulk of that is engineering, development of the project, siting.
Okay, so what of the $100 million reflects materials that could be, for example, used for another project, like a transformer? Do you have a sense of what the percentages of materials versus some costs?
That is actually something that we do look at. The materials, the towers are site specific, so there isn't a lot of.
These are monopole or lattice?
I think that most of them are monopoles.
Okay.
And they are site specific, so there isn't a lot of opportunity to redeploy those materials to other projects. The transformers, and particularly the other parts of the equipment that would go in the substations, are a little more fungible, and we do look at that. So if there is an opportunity at some point to redeploy those assets, those would be credited to the project and used for something else, and that would be a benefit to whomever gets those transformers, because those transformers are significantly cheaper than what they are today.
Okay. So in terms of the project, have all the materials been purchased then? So the wires, the poles, the transformers, everything's ready to go?
I don't know that for a fact. I actually think that if we were directed to construct the project, if we were given a green light, there may be some things that still need to be acquired.
Okay,
so I don't think that's 100%.
Most has already been purchased.
Yes.
Okay, and it's sitting in a warehouse somewhere, or is it on site?
It's a number of warehouses. Some of them are very close to where the project would be constructed. I think that there is a site in Pennsylvania. I think that the site that it's storing the electrical equipment, it's somewhere else because it has specific requirements to, again, minimize the cost of maintaining these assets at the ready.
And do you know if there's been any cost recovery for any of the parties in terms of QIP?
Certainly, Your Honor. The formula rate for both Transource Pennsylvania and Transource Maryland has what they call FPA 205 formula rate. So there are costs that are being recovered right now.
So those costs would be recovered regardless of what we do in terms of the CPCN?
That is correct, Your Honor, because the other very significant part of that cost recovery order from FERC was the incentives, and the incentives does include ongoing recovery on QIP, which creates cash flow for the projects, and abandonment costs.
Okay. So So you have the materials, they're in warehouses. To follow up on Commissioner Richards' questions, what specifically would you, if we were to extend the CPCN to the end of the year, what costs would you be incurring?
Those costs, Your Honor.
Tell me specifically what those costs are.
Certainly, it's the cost of maintaining the real estate options and the costs associated with maintaining the materials in a ready
Okay,
state.
so maintaining the real estate options, what does that involve?
Options have time lapses, and if the project gets to a point where the options would lapse, then essentially what needs to happen is that they need to be extended, and there's a cost associated with that.
Okay,
So
do you have a sense of what options are going to lapse this year?
I don't, Your Honor, but I think that we went through the process of renewing those options within the past 2 years on a rolling basis. That's something that I could find out if it's helpful information. But
That would be helpful. And then maintaining the materials, is it paying warehousing costs, paying staff of the warehouse? What are we talking about in terms of those costs?
I think that it's on a contract basis, and they're essentially warehousing and maintenance costs.
Okay, and staff suggested that was $800,000 a year. Does that sound like the right number?
That would be combined with another of the utilities that it's responsible for portion of the project. I think that the Transource Maryland portion of that is north of 400,000. I don't have the number in front of me, but
Okay, so it's less than $800,000 a year.
yes, it's less than
So you're thinking 400,000.
that. It's around there. There's a number in the record. Your Honor.
Okay. So at this point now, you're waiting for an updated model to determine need. But at this point right now, you don't have a needs determination. Is that correct?
No, Your Honor, that actually it's not right. The first part that you indicated is correct, which is right now we are waiting for the model to be updated. But if I can elaborate a little bit on what suspension means, when PJM suspended the project, what it did is that it removed it from the planning models so that it could address the needs as they were arising, because there was no expectation that the project could be constructed within a particular period of time. But the project continues to be part of the RTEP, and it's an approved project for PJM purposes. So from that point of view, the need of the project continues to be the same as it was determined when the project was added to the
Well, I mean, one of
RTEP.
the reasons why the project was put in suspended state is because of changed system conditions, including substantially increased load forecast and generation deactivation. So there was a determination made that conditions had changed.
Yeah, if I may, Your Honor, what happened is that the conditions existed that were addressed by the project, but the project was not expected to be constructed.
So I guess my question is, at this point right now, in
Yeah.
2025, do you have a determination that you can rely on that says these projects are needed?
Your Honor, yes, because PJM still has them as approved projects. There has been no determination that system conditions have changed in such a way that these projects should be
So
counted.
you are relying on a determination that PJM made a number of years ago. And then PJM put the project in suspended state, and one of the reasons why is because changed system conditions. So I'm asking you, at this point right now, do you have a needs determination made by PJM? This project is needed.
Yes, Your Honor, and I'm sorry that I may be not articulating this very clearly. So two points to what you just indicated. One is that PJM made the determination first through the competitive process that this was the best solution based on the conditions.
That was what year?
That was in 2016 and the
Yeah,
period of time when the
That's
project
9
was-
years ago.
Correct.
So I'm asking if at this point now in 2025, do you have a determination that you could rely on, you could present to the commission to say these three projects are needed?
Oh, Your Honor, that's a different question, if I may, because PJM has reevaluated the project a considerable number of times since it first elected it, and has always determined that the project should not be canceled because it's better to keep it in the RTEP, in the regional.
Well, I understand that. I mean, if I understand in your point about having these settlements, but I'm asking you, do you have a needs determination now that you could rely on to show that these projects are needed, these three
Right,
projects?
Your Honor. And if I may, let me try to answer that question this way. Right now, with the most recent reevaluation, that did not have models that truly reflected the needs of the system, there could be no determination by PJM to tell us that the project is needed. So based on that, we wouldn't come to the commission.
You're waiting for a needs determination, correct? I mean, isn't that the model that PJM is this sort of new model that they're going to run to determine whether the project is needed or not?
Your Honor, I wouldn't articulate it that way because the need determination, it's not based on a look at the project in an isolated basis as it does so today. So from that point of view, without looking at the system's updates that are going to be reflected in the next model, we cannot make a determination of what the project does or doesn't do.
That's exactly my point, is that at this point now, you cannot present to us that you're waiting for information to come from PJM. At this point now, you cannot make a presentation to us that these projects are needed. I mean, I'm looking at staff's conclusion that at this point now, it could create uncontrolled congestion, potential reliability violations. That doesn't sound like a needed project.
Yeah, Your Honor, if I may, actually what that indicates is the model does not reveal what the needs of the system are.
But so you don't have, I mean, you can argue that the reasons why staff has those findings, but at this point now, you don't have a model that shows that this project is needed.
Not a current model.
That's all. That was my question.
Yeah, the previous models.
No, I understand
demonstrate
that. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Barbie.
Yeah, simple question. If we give you an extension, what will the burn rate be between now and the end of the year?
The incremental costs,
Correct.
they're minimal relative to the size of the project. They would be comparable and
Well, the project's big, so what would the minimal amount be?
Well, the costs for Transource Maryland in the previous year were somewhere between $500,000 and $400,000 to keep the project in a ready state, and Maryland and Pennsylvania has a number of its own.
Are you?
Yeah, last year I'm referring. The year that we just reported was 430,000, which is about 160,000 less than it was the year before. The year before was 600,000.
So you're expecting it to continue to go down?
I expect
400,000.
I expect them to stay steady. Like the variation between at that level of magnitude, that's just a question of, for example, what Commissioner was asking about which specific options.
Well, let me ask this question.
Yeah.
Can you give us a specific itemized estimate of what that cost would be?
That could be prepared.
Okay, I'd love to see that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so if PJM was in the room today and we asked them, is this project needed, their answer would be, we don't know, correct?
The answer would be that the project is still not canceled and that we need to look at the model
I
with the
understand,
updated.
but so it's not canceled, but it's not green lighted either.
Correct.
Okay, so,
But if I may, Your Honor, the reason is it's not grid lighted. It's simply because we need regulatory approvals in order to obtain that.
Okay.
And in order to have the regulatory approvals, we need to go through a process that I'm sure that it's going to have to demonstrate the updated need for the project today.
and if we do not grant the extension, what are the consequences of that?
Yeah, that's difficult to ascertain, but there are a couple things that I can say about that. Creating additional obstacles for the project makes it more likely that it would be canceled, and if it would be canceled, very likely it would go into an abandonment proceeding, in which the currently sunk costs wouldn't be recovered without the expectation that there's going to be anything constructed for it. So that would be, from my perspective, the least beneficial scenario based on the information that we have right now, because that would tend to cause the project to not be able to proceed, and the sunk costs are still there. Whereas if the extension is granted, the expectation is that once we know whether the project is needed, we're going to be able to put all the effort that has been already undertaken towards completing the facilities and put them in service.
And if we don't grant you the extension, can you still renew these land options that you, I mean, has the route been determined for this project?
The route has been determined for this project, Your Honor. If the commission were to not renew the process, we would inform of that to PJM rather quickly, and my expectation is that they would take that into consideration in making a determination of how viable the project is. Right now, the project has moved in the direction of success, in the sense that it obtained the district court order, and we have gone through the litigation. We have obtained the additional new settlement with Pennsylvania. I should also highlight that Transus Pennsylvania has gotten a different project approved in Pennsylvania, while this one has been tied up in litigation. So from that point of view, the project has been moving towards success rather than cancellation. But if this commission were to deny the renewal, I think that has the potential of precipitating things and may lead to abandonment proceedings, which are maybe necessary, but we try to avoid that because we want to deliver on a project rather than recover costs and not have anything to show for it.
And what's the status of the money that has been spent on this project from a recovery standpoint? I mean, how much of this has been flowed through to the ratepayers of BG&E and Potomac Edison?
There is a formula rate regulated by FERC, and that has essentially I'm going to say three sides. There is the ongoing day-to-day costs, O&M, stuff like that, that gets recovered more or less on a concurrent basis. And then there is the return on QEP, which is one of the FERC-approved incentives for the project that also creates an amount that needs to be recovered in revenue requirement. There is another pot of money, which is essentially the sunk costs that are not being recovered right now, because usually recovery of those it's triggered when the project is substantially completed and placed in service. So that pot of money, it's just on the books, but it's not being recovered. It's a regulatory asset, essentially.
All right, I guess the final question. This is
Yes.
going to require some crystal ball on your part.
I'll try my best, Your Honor.
I mean, do we expect to get a final decision out of PJM about this project going forward or being canceled this year?
Yes, Your Honor. I think that there is an interrelationship between that and the federal litigation. And now that the federal litigation is fully briefed and all that we are doing is waiting for the decision from the Third Circuit, I think that once that comes in, which I expect that it's going to come in prior to the update of the model, once the model shows whatever it shows, we're going to get a very clear direction from PJM either to go forward with the project or not.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so in terms of, you think about 100 million has been spent on these three projects?
On project 9A Transource portion, which
For
would
in
include
Maryland.
Transource Pennsylvania and Transource Maryland. The number that I'm giving you is the combined.
Okay, so, and we can deal with the combined piece. What percentage do you think has been recovered by AEP and the transmission owners?
Oh, from that amount, that it's not in recovery because that's going to be essentially go in recovery mode once the project goes in service.
Okay, so what has been recovered?
O&M expenses and our return on QIP.
Okay, and do you have a sense of how much? So the 100 million is the regulatory asset. That's just sitting there until.
That's correct.
Okay, so you're not. Are you able to give us a sense of how much has been recovered?
That number exists, Your Honor. I actually don't know it from the top of my head, but the way that works is that every year both Transource Pennsylvania and Transource Maryland have a revenue requirement that it's a projected transmission revenue requirement, and then that gets trued up. So there is a number. We can certainly provide that number after the fact, but that is ascertainable.
Okay.
But it's nowhere in the magnitude of
Yeah.
$100
No,
million.
I'd like
of
to see
course.
that number though.
Yes,
Okay.
certainly.
Thank you.
If I could just have one follow-up just from what I've heard so far from
Yes,
the
Your
other
Honor.
questioners. It almost, I'm hearing an argument that we should just stop the project right now, because if you're saying we're going to move right into abandonment costs, that, as opposed to just letting another year go by where all three projects, continue to expend money. Am I hearing that correctly? I mean, especially given that we don't know what PJM is going to do. I mean, at this point, it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, is, we've been given all this information, but now we're just told to disregard it because it was all wrong. So we've got this kind of junk information that we've been kind of, leaning on all this time, and we've let the costs go up. It just seems like we ought to just cut our losses now on one part of that question. But the other part is they're going to continue to do RTEPs. The next RTEP is being worked on, and there could be other intermediate need or immediate needs projects. And isn't that going to, whatever the issue is at this time for, thermal violations or for market efficiency, that's just going to kind of get rolled into the ongoing process. It just feels like your project has been left behind, and we're just looking now to the future of what PJM is going to model going forward.
Yeah, thank you, Honor. I would say precisely the opposite. The project has a level of maturity that makes it very attractive from the point of view of how quickly it can be placed in service.
How can you say that? We don't have the information to know this level of maturity. Other than you spent some money on it, we don't know what PJM is going to say, whether it's needed or not. At this point, it sounds like your project is going to cause harm that needs to be solved.
No, Your Honor. What I'm referring to is to the fact that the project already has significant equipment that it was acquired at a cost much cheaper than it would be today,
Is
and that it's in hand
salvage
already.
value to that? Because again,
sorry?
there are a lot of projects being proposed right now, and so it seems like if not for this project, I mean, there's going to be a need for these projects that are urgently needed for some of this equipment. So is there salvage
No,
value?
that it's not correct. I mean, to the extent that these things are fungible, some of it could, but I can tell you that transformers are very specific. So no, my expectation would not be that, for example, the transformers could be used in another project. But if I may, Your Honor, just to make sure that I'm not creating a misunderstanding here. When I say that the project is mature, what I mean is that the project has advanced in siting, engineering, and material acquisition
Okay, but
so that it
here-
can be
here
deployed
my-
much
my
faster.
issue, though, is I'm hearing it's all advanced for a project that has a .81 BC and a project that could potentially do harm to the system. So why would I want a mature project like that? It
No,
sounds like we just
Your Honor.
want to cut our losses.
No, Your Honor. Actually, what I'm indicating is that the numbers that you are indicating are reflective of the model not having
Okay, yeah,
an updated version.
I feel like we're just
of
going in a
reality.
circle here. Yeah,
But if I may, Your Honor, the key is that the needs of the system are dynamic, and having this particular facilities, not in the abstract, but the ones that have been approved by the commission here in Maryland, having these facilities may very well, and this is the expectation once they do the analysis, offset the need for doing other things cheaper and faster. So from that point of view, it's not a concept that the project being left behind. On the contrary, this is the tool that it's the most readily available to solve the needs once it's analyzed. And if when PJM makes that analysis, they make the determination that this is a wrong tool, they will cancel the project. But if it's the right tool, it's going to be the right tool at the fastest time and at the lowest cost.
Okay. Well, I feel like the PGM is already doing that now. They're working on the RTEP, the 2025 RTEP, and I know through the ISAC committee, we've provided inputs from the state. So it just feels like, you know, the process is dynamic, and it's already kind of covered for the fact that this project has been suspended and is not being looked at in the context of current planning. So anyway, I've asked a lot of questions, so
No, I appreciate that. And, Your Honor, if I may, quick clarification, it is being looked at. That's what the revaluation process is. And the thing is that when they do the revaluation this year, they're going to see what the project does in the context of the current needs. And if it's needed to solve things, it will be because it's the right tool. And if it isn't, the project will be canceled.
Okay. Well, I feel like I've been told I can't trust the information PGM has provided for discussion today, and I'm supposed to believe what they provide a year from now or 3 quarters from now. But thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chair.
Honor.
Well, and the problem is, I mean, it's a big if. So you're suggesting that after this, the new model is run, it may show that the project is beneficial. But the only information we have right now is the project could cause congestion and reliability problems, and it's not passing the BC test. So that's the information we have now. I guess my other question is, so you spoke about minimizing costs from now until the time we see this new model run.
Correct.
What's going to happen in terms of QIP and O&M recovery? That's going to continue. So customers are going to continue to pay for a project that may or may not go forward, but it's looking pretty negative at this point. So knowing the challenges of the project, we're supposed to continue to allow you to not just continue the minimal charges that you said about sort of maintaining the rights of way and taking care of the equipment, but we also have this cost recovery that's going to continue. Is that correct?
Your Honor, that cost recovery will continue regardless of whether the project is canceled. That cost recovery is dependent on the FERC formula rate, and it will continue.
So if we were to cancel that project right now, not extend it, what will happen to cost recovery? That's going to stay the same?
Actually, will be precipitated, because then at that point it will be necessary to recover the $100 million that have been accrued to date. So then that would cause the costs to have to be recovered essentially upfront.
So that would be today, or that would be 8 months from now.
It's a FERC.
But it would have no impact on QIP or O&M.
No, Your Honor, that's correct. The costs. Well, okay. So you asked about O&M. The O&M in that hypothesis probably would go up because then there would be quite a bit of work related to the recovery of those costs, and that would cause costs that are right now slated to be spread over several decades to be recovered in a much more compressed period of time, and no project to show for it.
So let me ask you a different question.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with multiple jurisdictions, Pennsylvania and Maryland,
Yes.
and you're trying to get CPCNs from all of these various jurisdictions.
Yes.
Once you get a CPCN from a different jurisdiction, do you wait and see how the project's going to go forward in the other jurisdictions, or do you just go out and start spending money?
Spending money, it's not probably the criteria. It's whether start construction.
Well, you couldn't start construction until the CPCNs came in through the Pennsylvania project.
That's correct.
So
And that was a condition that was imposed by.
well,
the
I understand that, but notwithstanding the fact that you were still waiting on CPCNs for the Pennsylvania portion of the project, you went ahead and bought everything that you needed for the Maryland projects.
Oh, Your Honor, that was actually much before that. The lead time for these projects requires that costs are incurred while the process is being.
Okay.
pursued.
Anything purchased for the Pennsylvania portion of the project?
You mean after the denial?
No, I'm saying once you started buying for the Maryland portion of the project, did you spend any money for the Pennsylvania portion of the
Oh,
project?
both of them are concurrent, Your Honor, and
So you bought monopoles for the Pennsylvania rights of way, transformers, wires.
yeah, the timing of the project at the time required that be done. So otherwise, we would not have been able to meet the in-service dates that were
Okay.
contemplated.
So notwithstanding the fact that you didn't have a CPCN for the Pennsylvania portion of the project, you already went out and started buying all the stuff.
Your Honor, if I may, both the Maryland and the Pennsylvania processes, the legal processes for the CPCN, were more or less concurrent with each other, and the engineering, the right-of-way, the acquisition of equipment, all of that actually happens prior to obtaining a CPCN. Much of that actually has to occur that way, because otherwise there would be an articulated project to ask for permission for approval.
So once you got the okay from PJM, you just assumed you were going to get all your CPCNs when you went out and started purchasing materials.
Not assume, Your Honor. It's a requirement of the project development. So in order to meet those requirements, activities need to start occurring much in advance of obtaining a CPCN, and that's actually the only way that things can get built.
Okay, and what happens if you don't get the CPCN?
Well, if the project were to be canceled for reasons beyond the control of Transource, then that's where the abandonment kicks in from the FERC formula rate, so that the company can recover the prudent incurred costs.
And the ratepayers' rates go up.
That's correct, Your Honor. And at that point, if it's an abandonment proceeding, it's because the project is actually there's no project.
And this is how it's always done. So you start to buy and start to accumulate before you even know if you're allowed to do it.
I wouldn't articulate it as before allowed to do it, Your Honor. Once the project is selected by PJM, and PJM and transmission owners have a contractual relationship that is regulated by FERC. So FERC establishes a rate, and at that point, the project is trying to get to the point where it can be placed in service. And in order for it to be placed in service, it needs to go through very significant processes, and that's why, in fact, that's why FERC has the formula rates and incentives.
I'll tell you, I feel so uncomfortable at this point with being told well, you either approve the extension or Maryland ratepayers are going to get really hit with a large abandonment charge. That I feel like you're holding me over a cliff and telling me, either approve the extension or Maryland ratepayers are going to be in for a world of hurt.
Yeah, if I may, Your Honor, that's of course not my intention.
I'm telling you, that's what I'm hearing.
I understand, and what I'm trying to convey is that the needs in the system are significant, and they are evolving. And we have a project here that
may or may not help, or may not cause harm. We actually don't know at this point whether this project is a good project or a bad project. Because it may actually be not a neutral project. It actually may be a bad project. If we're to believe what I'm reading, that it could cause congestion and reliability violations, that would be a bad project.
Your Honor, I can tell you that if the determination was that the project was going to cause problem, my expectation is that PJM would cancel it.
Well, they cancel it, and then you'd have $100 million that you would get an abandonment cost recovery from ratepayers. So then we'd have a bad project that should never have gone forward, but the only folks that are going to be suffering are Maryland ratepayers who are already seeing very high rates.
Yeah, Your Honor, I don't mean to be contrary, but just to elaborate a little bit on what you indicated, the key to that is that the projects are determined at the time that they are created with information that is available. And it's entirely possible that the right solution for ratepayers is to cancel a project and essentially cut one's losses. That there is a scenario in which that is the right approach, and abandonment is for that. But the flip side of that, and I don't mean to come across as putting a pressure on you, but just simply to describe, the one thing that I think from a customer point of view that it's the least desirable is to cancel a project prematurely and then having to solve the problem in a different way, having spent the money and not being able to use what.
But the problem is, I don't know that we're solving anything. All I'm looking at is $100 million of material that's sitting there that the ratepayers are going to have to pay if we cancel it, or it might get canceled, later in the year. But I don't have, and that's what I asked you before, I don't have before us anything that is showing that this project is needed.
Your Honor, if I may, back in 2014, this project proposed, it was clearly demonstrated past the B-to-C ratio. From 2017, 18, 19, 20, all the way up until last year, it exceeded the B-to-C ratio. And in fact, beyond exceeding the B-to-C ratio for a market efficiency project, throughout the course of the litigation, when we tried this case in front of the Commission, it was also demonstrated to solve reliability criteria violations. When Pennsylvania decided to reject the project, right, the developer did the responsible thing, which was to go to court and to try to get that decision overturned because they still had a designated entity agreement from PJM saying, go build this, and to exercise good faith, best efforts to get the project built. So they pursued litigation, did that responsibly, and now that's coming to a conclusion. In the course of that, over these years, exceeding that B-to-C ratio, demonstrating reliability benefits, there was an evaluation where it dropped below, for the first time, dropped below the B-to-C ratio, right? What PJM said is, hold on a second. We know that since that model was run, we know that since that time, there's been an increase in load that continues not only in 23, 24, and 25, but dramatically over that period, as well as retirements. As you know, retirements in this state. So what we're asking, we think is very reasonable, is wait until they do a reevaluation based on the topology that exists today, when they know what retirements are coming, they know what the load forecast is, and for you to know that there was already a decision by this very commission saying that this project is needed. So what I reject is the characterization that this project is a bad project or was a bad project. It was never a bad project.
Okay, but I'm saying,
Let me finish. It was never a bad project today. We're asking for a very reasonable period of time. Let's finish this evaluation. If it concludes that it's not needed, then they'll take the responsible path, PJM will as well. But this has never been a bad project. You put your imprimatur on this. This Maryland Commission says it's a good project. And in fact, one of the reasons PJM asked for some delay because of the decision you all made to have this project in the RTEP because it helped benefit Maryland.
so a
You all
decision,
know better
wait,
than
excuse me,
anyone.
sir,
You know
Mr. Kern,
Okay,
please.
let's-
The fact that this decision was made 4 years ago, I think feeds into the fact that, I mean, Mr. Garcia himself made the case that the grid is dynamic and things change. And the concern I have right now is that I don't have before us anything showing that this project is needed, notwithstanding decisions made.
That's not true. That's
Okay.
not true. And the reason
Okay.
I say it, and I'm sorry for getting heated here.
No, it's
The
okay.
reason I'm saying this, because to be honest with you, I've lived with this project since, and so has Mr. Garcia since 2017. So we've seen the ebbs and flow, right? We're as frustrated as you all are, right? We want to see this go forward because Maryland has a congestion problem. And this was a project that was designed to help relieve that congestion.
Mr. Curran, there's no question that we have a congestion problem. The concern I have is that we could be picking the wrong project, so that not only do we end up with not solving the congestion problem, but we end up with a bigger congestion problem and a reliability issue, and we'll have just spent hundreds of millions of dollars. That's what my concern is, and I don't have any assurances at this point right now that this project is going to address all of that, because we don't have before us anything that shows currently in 2025 that the project is needed.
And that's why we're asking you to do the prudent thing, which is let PJM do their evaluation based on the topology that exists today, their forecast today, their RTEP today, and let them, we can't make this analysis today in this room. We're asking for a short extension of time. Let the litigation conclude in Pennsylvania. Let the process go forward in Pennsylvania. And if PJM elects to cancel the project, which they haven't done, they haven't canceled this project, let the engineers make that decision and come back to you. And if you need information, I fully understand. If you need more information, we're happy to provide that. What are our costs, how we're minimizing them. But don't conclude today that this is not a needed project. Because if you do that, and PJM makes the decision that they want to go forward with this, then we'd have to go back through this entire process again, where there's been years of litigation in Maryland, working with landowners. We've gotten the majority of our options necessary to build this line. So I'm just saying, don't throw that out. Let them make the decision, and we'll come back to you. That's what we're asking.
All right, so let me ask a couple of sort of more process questions.
Certainly.
So we've made a number of requests for information, which you said you could provide, but I
That's
guess
correct.
I need to know how soon.
The type of information that you have requested, it can be provided rather quickly. I don't know what the turnaround for a post-hearing data request is in Maryland, but 7 days should be plenty.
Okay, all right. Second question. We're not going to make the decision today, but at what point do you need a decision out of us about this extension?
The temporary extension that the commission has issued, I think that runs the 31st of this month. So the deadline is a Maryland Public Service Commission deadline.
If you want to extend that temporarily until you get the information, that would also be acceptable.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I may, because I think that this is important, I understand, Commissioner, the one thing that we do know is that the models as PJM is updating them, show more and more load and more need, which is why more and more facilities need to be added. And I think that the question really at any given point for this particular project is this the I call it the right widget? Is it the right tool to solve the problems that are in the model when it's updated? And again, if it's determined that it isn't, I'm confident that we're going to be told that and we'll inform the commission immediately.
Okay, all right. So there's actually somebody behind you who's been patiently waiting.
I think it's good afternoon now, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Robin Leone with Saul Ewing. I'm here on behalf of the Potomac Edison Company, and if you have questions for me or if you would like me to facilitate transfer of information from the company to the Commission, I'm happy to do that for you.
So any questions? Oh,
Can I? You've heard our questions, and I know there are two other companies, and we kind of only focused on the TransSource. But I mean, from what you've heard, you know what my questions are. Do you stand with what you heard from TransSource? Are there any differences in your answers to my questions?
I think the slight nuance, well, we, in terms of, our accrued costs, in the majority is probably allowance for funds, used for construction, AFUDC. There are some accounting timing things that we have, projects that were completed prior to the suspension that have not been invoiced, so that's also part of the accrual. And I think the other thing, to Mr. Curran's point about readiness, that is something that is a very big concern on the transmission side of these projects because we are limited. We have construction seasons, so we can't, if it were to happen that we could flip the switch on November 1 and we don't have everything that we need to get started, we're not able to do anything, until the following year, 6 months later, when we're back in a construction season. So there's like sort of an added pressure there in terms of readiness. So a lot of the AFUDC costs are really associated with readiness.
Okay, and for your company, you have, obviously it sounds like you've acquired material for the IEC project. But there are $10 billion worth of other projects right now that have come along since that time, and many of them, are going to your company. So, can any of these materials be used if this particular project gets canceled? Can you, just for our information, is there some salvage value for the ratepayers?
I mean, I defer to transmission management on that, but logic tells me that yes, I do think that there is something with respect to KV and what type of capacitor, there's different types of things where it may be that what we have set aside for this project cannot be immediately used for something else. Or it could be that would be the case.
Okay.
So I don't want to say for sure that is the case, but I know that they have repurposed some things in the past. Not anything that takes a very long lead time.
Okay. Mr. Chair, maybe the information we asked from TransSource we can also just apply to BGE and FE, First Energy, right? Yeah, okay. And that would be helpful at least to know at least what the sunk costs are and what the materials that have been acquired and what materials will be acquired, what expenses will be expended should we extend this. Because
so I guess the question I got though, is there anybody here from BG&E or?
Okay, and Mr. Chairman, can we include in that request also cost recovery that the utilities are getting from these projects?
Right. So I guess the question I have for you, Mr. Curran, do we need to send a specific request to PE and BG&E in order to get this, or is this something you can forward to them?
I mean, I will probably go back and look at today's proceedings to see what your questions were, but if you all can send a bench data request, that would also help
Okay.
facilitate
All right.
that.
We can.
And we commit to getting that
Yeah.
very quickly.
Okay. All right, so we're going to take this under advisement today. We will probably issue an order sort of, stopping the process, at least for a short period of time, for us to get the information and digest it and then go forward. So.
I appreciate that. And again, Your Honor and Commissioner Suchman, I apologize for my level of advocacy today.
No, that's fine.
I've lived with this
I actually
many years.
no, Mr. Curran, I actually appreciate someone who is devoted and dedicated to their, so I have no problem with that.
I am both
We're fine.
devoted and dedicated.
Okay.
So,